Number one is why. Why are you doing magic? And number two is what are you trying to get out of it? Now, asking these two questions really opens up an entire world of possibilities in terms of what is your goal with magic. Now, for me personally, I could speak that my greatest satisfaction is creating. I love creating new tricks. I love creating effects. I love finding variations on old tricks. I love sitting down and setting up these problems for myself that I have to solve through cards. So setting these limitations as we talked about in previous episodes. I really, really enjoy doing that. And I do enjoy the opportunity to perform that when the opportunity arises. However, I don't enjoy performing as much as I do creating a trick or even teaching it to people. Now, that might be different to other people because some people might enjoy magic for the performance aspect. And it is, in fact, a performance art for the most part. There is an art to it. There is an art to creating. However, magic essentially is a performance art. So some people enjoy performance more than anything else. Now, as to the question of why, magicians always tend to have the same story when it comes to why we perform things. And that is, we tend to be a shy person. We tend to be initially not outgoing, and we're trying to find a conduit to help us in that next step. We're trying to find that conduit into helping us interact with people that isn't necessarily ourselves. And I think the earlier you realize that magic is not that conduit, the better off you are. Now, don't get me wrong. I love magic. I love absolutely everything about magic. It's my livelihood. It's my life. But I don't think that magic should be that conduit. And I don't think magic should be a substitute for personality and the only thing you rely on for social interactions. Now, obviously, that doesn't apply to everyone. Obviously, there are people who are extroverted who get into magic just because it allows them to extend their own personality. However, in my experience, the majority of people tend to be less outgoing, tend to be more socially awkward, and they get into magic to learn those facets of human interaction, to learn that psychology. And while that is useful, it's definitely not the only route to take. You need to learn how to be a human first, and then magic comes second. And the earlier you realize that, and the earlier you stop using magic as that crutch or stop using magic as that conduit, the more you realize all that really matters is you. The trick doesn't matter. It's the experience the person is having with you. Now let's go back to the what aspect. I already mentioned that my goal is to create as much as possible, to teach as best as I can to people. However, that might not be your goal. And how do you find out what do you want to do in magic? Because I think the earlier you find that out, the more you could optimize and the more you could streamline and the more you could focus on that particular thing. Do you want to get on TV? Do you want to get a YouTube channel? Do you want to just consult creatively? Do you want to publish tricks? Do you want to become known as a performer? You need to establish your goal early on and do everything you possibly can to reach that goal in magic. Now, for me, again, my goal is creating. So through this channel, through this media, I have an opportunity to teach the things that I've not only come up with, but to teach the things that I've had touches on for the past 17 years to you guys, which is something that I think is beneficial to everyone. So really take a step back and stop thinking about tricks, stop thinking about methods, and think about what it is that you want to accomplish with magic. What is it that you want to accomplish by learning this art form? And oftentimes, it might just be a hobby. It might just be something you do to pass the time, which is perfectly fine. However, for the people that do want to contribute heavily to the art and the people that do want to take it to the next level, you do have to think as to what it is that your goal is with magic. You have these wonderful minds in magic that they barely perform. They actually have performance anxiety, and they get more satisfaction in creating tricks and selling those tricks to magic companies as opposed to performing tricks for actual people. So they get their jollies more from watching people actually perform the tricks than actually performing it themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. Same as there's nothing wrong with a performer who doesn't do any tricks of his own. He just performs things that he learns. However, he does get his satisfaction from performing for people. So really take a step back as to thinking what you want to accomplish with magic. And the earlier on you fix this, the earlier on you figure that out, the better it is in the long term for your magic future. Now, I don't want to leave you guys without something to practice after that long ramble on why and what. So I do want to show you guys a little bit of a multiple control. Now, we do have the idea of controls in magic where we control one or even a few cards. Here, it's a multiple control, meaning we are controlling 4 cards or more at the same time. So in this case, we're going to make use of that with the 4 aces. Now, obviously, there are touches on multiple controls by Di Vernon, Ed Marlowe, Alan Ackerman, Harry Lorraine. They all have different individual touches on particular sleights. This is just my variation on this multiple card control. So we're going to take the aces and we're going to put them in different parts of the deck. Now, the good thing about this control is that you could show the aces cleanly to be in different parts of the deck without any sort of jiggery pokery, as some magicians might say. But we could Hindu shuffle the cards and overhand shuffle, and in that action, we have subsequently controlled the aces back to the top of the deck. So this is actually a very easy way to control the cards, and looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. Now, the reason I came up with this particular card control is because I was very lazy, and I didn't like the other card controls. There were a lot that involved angles. There were a lot that involved pretending to push in the cards and then doing some sort of overt action. I really didn't like those because of the angles restrictions, because they were frankly harder than I wanted them to be in performance. So this is just one that you are literally doing what you need to do. You are stripping the aces out. That's it. There's no pushing in. There's no pushing out. There's no sort of excess move. You're just pulling them out. And I've realized in performing this for people, they don't see anything. They just think you're shuffling the cards. So for this, you're going to have the 4 aces on top of the deck, and you're going to spread them out jogging them in the upper half of the deck. It's very important that the aces go in the upper half of the deck, because you're going to see you're going to make use of the lower half in a little bit. So you're out jogging these aces in the upper half of the deck. Now what's going to happen is that now you notice that we have a block of cards in the bottom, and we have the 4 aces here in the upper half of the deck that are out jogged. So we could show these 4 aces, which is very important that you do show the cards to the spectator, because this allows you to spread to the lower half of the deck and get a pinky break somewhere in the middle of the deck. So you notice that below the section with all the aces, we have a pinky break there. That's going to be very important, because in a moment, we're going to pick up at this break. We're going to bring the aces squared up with the lower hands cards. So one more time, we're spreading the cards. We're squaring it up, getting a break below the lower half of the deck. We're going to bring our hands here like a Hindu shuffle, and we're going to bring this entire thing so that now the aces are squared up with the lower half of the deck. At this point, you could strip these aces out on top of the deck, and you're going to start a Hindu shuffle. However, when you grab the first packet, you're going to use your pinky to separate that from the rest of the deck, so that now you could grab subsequent packets, and your pinky is separating this upper half from the lower half, which have all 4 aces on top of it. So you notice it's a very easy action. All you're doing is literally stripping out the 4 aces. You're not pushing anything in. You're stripping out the 4 aces on top of that lower half. That's all that's happening. So you're stripping out those 4 aces on top of that lower half. And then the next packet, you make a break. You make a separation there. So now you could Hindu shuffle these cards. If you even want, you could pick up from the break again and Hindu shuffle, maintaining that break. And anytime you want to control those aces to the top of the deck, you pick up the break and you could overhand shuffle. So here I'm just employing the use of the Mahatma control that we talked about in a previous lesson. So we're picking up at the break, revolving everything towards the right, and overhand shuffling these cards underneath the deck. Or at this point, if you want, you could even double undercut those cards to the top, so that subsequently what the spectator has seen is that you have Hindu shuffled the cards and given the deck a fair cut. But that action has controlled the aces to the top of the deck. Now we're going to go over different variations of this particular card shift, because there's a way to do it to preserve the entire deck order. So those are going to be in a more advanced lesson. However, for now, you have a very simple way of controlling the 4 aces or any 4 of a kind, or even any 4 cards, in a very, very discreet way. However, very simple, because it just should appear like you're shuffling the cards haphazardly and you still have control over those cards. So please leave in the comments below different uses for this, different ideas that you guys might have with this, or just different questions you guys might have on this particular card control, because I do have a lot of work on it. And I do definitely want to put out the way of doing this without changing the order of the cards. So thank you guys for being part of these lessons. Thank you guys for being part of the Pick K Card Academy. And I will see you guys on the next one.